rose up. In fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, he said he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console to which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, like his bank statements, his theater reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a...
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
But what about the city of the day after tomorrow? Say the year 2000.
Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate.
3 billion human lives ended on August 29th, 1997.
But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
Survivors of the nuclear fire called the War Judgment Day.
The incredible breakthrough which has been made possible by developments in communications.
They lived only to face a new nightmare, the war against the machines.
The of the day after tomorrow.
Could spell the end of the human race.
What about the city of the day after tomorrow?
All right, well, welcome to this episode of The Soul Trap, not in our Soul Trap studios. For the first time, we are on location in a coffee shop at the Soul Trap, and we are with Mr. Joseph Dulmage. We've interviewed you already. We've talked to you. You and I have talked many, many times.
Yeah.
And you have made me think. You have made me wrestle. You have made me rethink. You have made me scratch my head. You've made me pull my hair out. But all of it has been wonderful as we discuss the Bible. And today we're going to talk about a lot of different things.
Okay.
But we're going to talk about our artificial intelligence, AI. The last interview we had, and for full disclosure, I think that this is such a powerful spiritual topic. Many people that are watching this interview right now, for full disclosure, we actually did a recorded internet live video, and we lost it. We had just the weirdest glitch that we have ever had in the ether, and it was unbelievable. I happened to be up here preaching in Michigan. You were gracious enough to drive an hour and a half over here at the greatest coffee shop known to man, Fave's French Press Cafe, and a shameless plug. And you were gracious to meet here. But we're talking about artificial intelligence, the most recent book. Now, when we finished our last interview, you said we got to talk about AI. I said, yeah, let's do it. AI is, front page news. It's so front page that I actually have a friend of mine who's teaching a class to his preachers on how to use AI for sermon preparation. So we're not talking about guys sitting with tinfoil hats in a basement somewhere. The things that we used to be made fun of and mocked for, that, hey, that's kind of kooky, crazy, weird stuff, that is mainstream right now. We are seeing that unfold right in front of us.
Yeah.
So let's start with the book AI and give me the 35,000-foot thesis view. What is the basis of writing this book, and why does it need to be written?
Well, let me start with, after that first interview, and you said, come back, we'll talk about AI. I said, okay. So I started taking notes. I like to be prepared for what I'm going to say. And so I started, organizing my notes and everything. And about 3 weeks into it, I said, I might as well turn this into a booklet. That's why this existed. And I've never written a booklet so fast.
Yeah.
So that's how this came into being.
So you didn't use AI to write the book?
No.
Okay. Just
well, if you turn on a computer, you're using AI.
Yeah.
So, that's where we are. So you can't watch anything you can't turn on your phone, certainly with AI. AI is swallowing everything. Mm-hmm. It's not all bad. It's inevitable, but it's not all bad. We did, if I remember correctly, it's called the drop the mic moment. The only battle that Joshua ever lost in the Promised Land was the battle of AI.
Uh-huh.
And AI does mean heap of ruins. So, that's just the biblical connection. So that's interesting.
It is.
There are AIs in the Bible. And so anyway, the aerial view for a person to interpret AI And I put this in the book for the artificial intelligence, the first paragraph. You want me to read that?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the working definition for AI for this study. Artificial intelligence expresses and interprets images. Images are displayed on computer screens, phone screens, films, television, movie theaters, books, pages, satellite transmission, and holographs. These are all images. All images convert to data expressed in mathematical code. Data is remembered in computer storage devices, servers, the cloud. So everything has been in this society, in our world, is reduced into images now, artificial images. You know, and one thing else I want to report for those who are very interested in understanding even the mechanics, because I'm not a physicist, nor am I a scientist. I'm a Bible teacher. But there's a man by the name of Tristan Harris. And he has a YouTube channel. He's a scientist, and he is one of the co-developers of AI. He worked for Google, and he was very concerned about ethics. And he started now, he has resigned from Google because he's so alarmed about the development of AI. And he preaches to the governments, he preaches to the European Union, he's all over. And anyway, I very much recommend watching The AI Dilemma by Tristan Harris. It's a year old, but it's fine. It'll give me more information on the mechanics, on the biology almost behind AI, what it does and what it's doing.
So when we're talking about AI, the course for someone who studies the Bible, what catches your attention is that word image. You find image, let us make man in our image. You find that in Revelation 13, that the Antichrist, they make an image of the Antichrist, and they're able to give life to the image. Mm-hmm. So the connection there is that what we're talking about in AI, of course, the whole Terminator Skynet, ascension coming online, we're dealing with something that is growing at an infinite rate, and it is changing underneath of us, like Toffler wrote in Future Shock. It's changing the world, and we don't even realize the full ramifications. And what you're saying from this book is that AI is not just something that's a scientific thing, even a cultural thing. There's a real biblical connection to what we're witnessing now.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yes, I am. But there is science behind it.
Well, right. We're not excluding the science, but we're not just scratching a hobby. This has real world effect for Christians.
And I'd like to say AI has created an environment where evolution is literally true. It is evolving. And it's also ironic that all the developers of AI, or the vast majority of them, all believe in evolution. I see evolution as a salient problem with the way humans develop. I mean, if you really believe that, if you really believe that our destiny is up to us and we're God's small g, and everything, it explains everything from abortion to all these, these crazy humanitarian decisions that Christians find so perverse, because if everything's evolving, if it's up to us to make the best society and the survival of the fittest, well, then there's some people that need to go.
Yeah,
from that perspective.
So I'm just looking. You're talking about it's almost a living AI is almost a living expression of the false religion of this world, in the sense that they believe in evolution. Now they have created something that's evolving. They believe in the infinite knowledge of man. Now they've created something that is the pursuit of infinite knowledge. I was just looking up Romans, and it says they profess themselves to be wise. They became fools and changed the glory of God into an image.
That's the days of Noah.
That's the days of Noah.
And see, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. In Romans 1, where Paul, he's talking to us, but then he starts talking about it, goes to past tense. He says there was a generation whom God gave up.
Yes.
Well, that's not the church age. And I don't care, the worst person out there, anybody can get saved, is what I'm trying to say. No, God's not giving anyone up. But he did give up a generation, and that generation became so corrupt in their imagination.
He uses the word there.
And the root word for imagination is image, which is very important. So That's Noah's flood, and they actually built an image in the days of Noah's flood. And I think, full disclosure, I believe when Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man, I think they had everything we have.
So let's jump into that for just a second.
Everything.
Let's jump into that, because on page 19, once we get into the book, on page 19, you get into the days of Noah, and the head title of the chapter is Salient Scriptures to Interpret Last Days Technology. Now, I think I'd like you to speak to the fact that when we talk about the days of Noah, inevitably we begin with an ethical description of the days of Noah. We connect that with Paul's perilous times, and I get that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But you posit the theory that we don't limit the description of the days of Noah merely to a character or ethic. You are saying that history is cyclical, and that the technology, the world in which we are now, was with Noah, like Ecclesiastes says, that which was has been.
And Romans 1 proved it.
Yeah.
That generation that was given up.
So describe what were the days of Noah like? What did they look like?
Like now, except a little more advanced. I think they had computers, airplanes, AI, artificial intelligence. They had it all.
Wow.
They even built an image. They even built the image to the beast, to the creature. Read when you read Romans 1, when he goes into past tense, and just think about the days of Noah. And to your question, what were the days of Noah like? What gives us a right as Bible interpreters to presume that all God was talking about was the ethics or the spiritual well-being of the people? Why do you exclude technology?
Right.
The answer to that is because of pride. We just think we're the most advanced and we're the best, and everybody had to be lesser than us. So all I'm presenting, if you're hearing this for the first time, is there's no theological or scriptural reason to justify Noah's generation not having the same technology we do.
So that's really interesting, because when you read writers like Graham Hancock and others, when you go back for years, I mean, obviously, let's just take the lowest hanging fruit, right? The pyramid was not built by a bunch of guys in togas and a few elephants. The Tobeki monuments there in Turkey. The advancement, and I've often posited the theory here at the Soul Trap that after the flood, what happened is a lot of these archaeological buildings survived, and that they were repopulated, retooled, used as temples for the past, but that initially they were pre-flood architecture, which gives a whole new meaning to what you're saying prior to the flood. The reason why they were able to do that is because they were technologically advanced. That's what you're getting at.
Yes, and I do. You bring up the pyramids. Well, the Great Pyramid.
The Great Pyramid, that's what
yeah. The Great Pyramid is older than all the rest. I do believe that the Great Pyramid was here before the flood.
Yeah, I think the rest are trying to copy.
Yes, that's what I believe too.
Yeah.
It's different. It's not necessarily a tomb there, and it's survived the age, and it's very mysterious, and its capstone's missing.
Yeah, so let me ask you.
It's the cornerstone.
Right.
Why is the capstone missing?
Right.
I mean, nobody stole it. Nobody climbed up there.
You're not going to do that, yeah. So what's interesting to think about is you talk about images. We look at our phone. I mean, there's a lot of communication that goes on by sending images back and forth, whether it's memes or images on your phone or whatever it is like that. Then you start looking at ancient technology or archaeology, and you see the hieroglyphics. We call them hieroglyphics. But you see that they communicated in image, even the old, and I'm talking about ancient Chinese languages, and that they're more image-based. Even though they're letters, they're very image connotation basis. So when we're looking at AI, we're not talking about really something new. We're talking about something old being resurrected.
True. And the images that we live now in a virtual world. You take the optics here are just staggering too. You take your phone, you're looking at images all day long. And in the younger generation, it's even worse.
Yeah.
But your head's bowed. You're looking at this image, and you are you're getting benefits or blessings from this thing. All right, and you're holding it in your hand,
and you're addicted to it.
You're holding it. That's what there's a poem in the beginning of this. I'm not going to read it, but in the beginning of this book, that's about the phone. the image that is the superscription that Jesus talks about, that people are, what you look at Caesar right there. I mean, but the optics are just incredible for this thing. I don't care if you're looking at a tablet, if you're looking at your phone, or you're looking at a computer. Your head's bowed, you're looking at an image, and it's giving you blessings. It's communicating to you, and everything you see now is an image. This book's an image.
Yeah.
And back to AI for a minute. Every book in the world, Library of Congress, from Japan to China's Library of Congress, whatever they call it, everything's been scanned. Everything's in the cloud. Everything's in a supercomputer somewhere. Now just think about that. And the artificial intelligence provides a way where we can access this. Artificial intelligence now can synthesize all this data, and it can be retrieved. That's why it is godlike. There's no question about it. And people are dependent upon it now, and more so every day. You couldn't, if you shut off the computer system, the big threat, quarter century ago, 2000, we're all going to crash. Well, now the threat's worse than ever. If and it couldn't run without AI. I like to think it's ironic too, because God's response to the Tower of Babel. What if AI has taken everything and turned it back into one language. And if you did shut down the computer, just to be real simple about it, you would have the same effect on the earth that what happened to in the days of Noah, that the tower was shut down. When God destroyed the tower, it put the earth back, into the Stone Age for all basic purposes.
It would be mass confusion.
Yeah, it would destroy us. You couldn't deliver food systems, you couldn't have electricity, you couldn't have water systems. It'd be tribalism.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not for nothing. I'm not overstretching, but it's interesting that that's what they call a Dell computer tower. A tower.
Oh, you call them tower. And every other they launch every space program in the world, every country, wherever they launch anything in space, it's called a tower.
Yeah.
It's called a tower.
So when we're talking about AI in days of Noah, the theory, and I don't want to give everything away because people need to buy the book and read the book. But you move out of that into Sodom's connection. There's some real connection there.
Let me say something about this, though.
Go ahead.
Sodom is not the days of Noah. All right? However, when it talks about the days of Noah, it says even as. There's a likening to what was happening in Sodom is going to be happening in the end times. And what was happening, it was a lot more than homosexuality, but that was the icing on the, cake of disaster.
What's fascinating is that in each instance, Jesus referred to each as in the days of Noah, as in the days of Lot. But in each instance, one of the things that's very fascinating is that there is, without a doubt, angelic activity going on simultaneously amongst humans. You've got that clearly in Genesis 6. You've got that clearly in Genesis 19 with the two angels. Now, when you go fast forward, we read past these things. Paul says, though I or an angel from heaven. He warns us in Colossians.
And why would he say that?
Right. Well, what we say is, what we say is grammatically, well, he's just drawing a vast comparison, but I don't think so.
No, I agree.
He warns you again in Colossians. You're warned clearly about it in Hebrews. And then when you get into the book of Revelation, you've got under the angel of the church. And so it seems to me that this AI is directly connected with angelic activity. And I want you to speak to this because I think that the uptick in the UAPs or the UFOs or however people want to call it, I think the uptick in that is actually more manifestation of preliminary of the sons of God. I think it's very possible that Christians could see a return of angelic activity and have to actually live Galatians 1 before the rapture. What do you think the connection between AI and what we're seeing on the news?
Well, I completely agree. And I mean, if we are in the last days, then a lot of things have to exist, and that's one of them, including Mystery Babylon. If you're in the last days, Mystery Babylon exists. So who is it? Who is this government that has the strongest military on earth? Who is this government that the Antichrist needs to control? You have to come to grips with some things. But as far as the angelic activity, yeah, it's absolutely been happening. It's probably been happening since Israel became a nation.
So speaking of that, we were talking off record last night. You and I were talking about it, and we've discussed this before about Mount Rainier, the pilot Arnold. Tell me a little bit about what you're talking about, and we'll talk about that. You remember what we were talking about?
Yeah, I remember, and it's astounding, and it's remarkable, just like AI being introduced into the Bible. But if you took all the UFO reports for the last millennium, and they're out there even before, even BC, you know, but the vast majority of them, 90% plus, have all happened since 1948. There is a correlation, a direct line to Israel. Actually, you can make it to 1947, where the United Nations Resolution 181 said that the world's governments were going to allow Israel to come back into existence, which we know is preposterous, but that's the history. But that's in 1947. That's when these UFOs started to show up. Now, we got to be careful with the correlation, because it doesn't prove, but it's certainly part of the science.
Yes.
So I think it does prove it is connected with it, and the UFOs. Yes, I do think it's angelic activity. I don't think any of these UFOs are coming from outer space. Maybe the solar system. I'll go that far, but I think they're coming from this Earth, and. It's not just if an angel. Here, I'm going to ask a question. If it's an angel, if a bad angel who's still free, you agree with that? Satan's angels are our enemies, right? They're free to roam around and stuff. All right. If those guys need a machine to fly around in, do good angels? And if your answer is no, then why not? Your answer is I probably never thought about it. But so what I'm trying to get at is, just like there's these interactions with females, and they created the giants in the days of Noah, this hybrid organism that wasn't angel, wasn't human. Anyway, ever since then, they weren't completely human.
Yeah.
So I think, to make a long story short, I think this hybrid activity continues, and even after God destroyed the earth with Noah's flood, I mean, there were still giants, right? Giants show up in Israel. In fact,
which is a challenge for Bible teachers, because you're trying to figure out, okay, how did they show back up?
Okay, well,
right. So how did they? Some people, they were transferred through Ham or this or that, but
it's easier than that.
Go for it.
All right. What was destroyed in the days of Noah? Well, everything on the face of the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life, that was destroyed. Okay. Fish in the sea weren't destroyed. If you weren't on the face of the dry land and you had nostrils breathing the breath of life, if you could somehow get off the face of the dry land, you could survive scripturally. All right.
Which means you can either go up or down.
Right. And they went down. I think they went down.
So before we go too farther, I was looking at something while we were talking, because Jacques Vallée has a tremendous book called Wonders in the Sky.
Yeah.
He's a UFO researcher, but he doesn't believe that they're, just little green men, or he knows there's something interdimensional. John Keel was the same way. A lot of the high-level researchers, there is actually an account, and it's because you talked about Israel and the UFO phenomenon. Well, there is actually an account of Josephus, who wrote about when Jerusalem was under siege, that there were reported, and I'm looking at it right here, before the sun setting, Josephus wrote, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds. And
there again, but your correlation is Israel once again.
The correlation
always Israel. It's always Israel with Melchizedek too. He shows up after Israel's established. He shows up again doctrinally in the book of Hebrews, which is written to tribulation Jews. So Israel is this supreme connection
And some of the
UFOs.
Some of the major sightings that happened were during the Crusades that happened over in Jerusalem. Even when you think about some of the great moments, like Paul encountered Christ on the road to Damascus. But if you look at Muhammad and his supposed vision, obviously it wasn't of Gabriel, that kind of thing, but you look at how that affected Israel. That whole thing affected Israel.
There's an angel with another gospel, but
Yeah, that's the angel with another right. But what I'm saying is I think that there's a deep connection with Israel and UFOs. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people, but that's
not to me.
No.
It's always Israel. It's all about the Middle East now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who likes it.
Yeah.
It's always about the Middle East. It was at the first Advent. Middle East was given Rome fits.
Uh-huh.
You know, the last empire, the last great empire of the generation is the West, specifically America. It's given us fits.
Yeah.
And Jerusalem becomes this stumbling stone to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not pray for the peace of Israel. It's pray for the peace of Jerusalem. It's Jerusalem that sends everybody over the wall. It's the 1967 war. The UN decreed that, you know, whenever you hear about the West Bank, that means the pre-1967 borders. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they, as far as the world's concerned, Jerusalem does not belong to Israel.
Uh-huh.
The only president we ever had that said it did was Donald Trump. It's not a plug for Donald Trump.
Right.
But if he did nothing else, he did that.
Yeah.
All right. And so it's always, Jerusalem's the city of the great king. Jerusalem's where God is going to put his throne to rule the universe. And Jerusalem is where the Antichrist wants to be. Uh-huh. There's no other explanation.
There's a land, the Bible says, where God always has his eye on it. There's something unusual about that area in the universe.
Oh, yeah.
Something unusual. You said a minute ago, and this ties in, and I know we're going to go into deep water with this, but this ties into one of the things we talked about. You know, if you were pre-flood, you could go up, you could do that, or you could go down.
Right.
Inner Earth.
Inner Earth.
Let's talk about what the inner Earth is.
Well, when I say inner Earth, the Bible says nether Earth, too. It's the trees of Eden going down the nether Earth. I'm not necessarily saying you go down 1,000 miles or go to the center of the Earth. Abraham's bosom doesn't have to be in the center of the Earth. There's another conclusion that people make from nowhere. It's got to be in the center. Why does it have to be in the center? It could be 100, it could be 300 feet beneath your feet, and you never get to it. It could be a little bit underwater. It's easier to walk on the surface of the moon than it is to go 2,000 feet deep in the water. It's just easier. Things are forbidden on the Earth. So underground doesn't necessarily mean thousands of miles underground.
Yeah.
You just can't get to it. So that's what I mean. And full disclosure, I believe that paradise is Eden. You can prove this. Paradise is Eden. Abraham's bosom is paradise. Jesus says, today I will be with thee in paradise, to the malefactor on the cross, right? He says, today I'll be with you at paradise. So he went to Abraham's bosom. So the Garden of Eden was buried, and now paradise, Garden of Eden, Abraham's bosom, all the same place. They're all synonymous. That's what I believe.
In real-time space history, they are located under the Earth. We'll leave it at that, because you want to go at the center of the Earth. We don't know that.
They're under Jerusalem, too. They're under the Mount of Olives.
So tell me a little bit about that theory that you were talking about when Christ returns to Zechariah, the mountain splits. Tell us a little bit about it.
I want to catch up so I don't forget this. And back to UFOs. And the reason they call them UAPs now is unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Yeah, it sounds... They went to college.
Yeah.
But all UFOs are no longer flying around.
No. They really never
They're
have.
underwater.
Yes.
They have images of them underwater. And they're underground, and they don't know how they're moving underground, but they're moving. So this is why it's they're going to UAPs, but for the most part, it does mean UFO.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to what your question you just asked. Jesus Christ touches comes down, he touches his feet, touch the Mount of Olives, right? And it says there's a great earthquake. The mountains divide and open up. And there's a very great valley. In Isaiah 45 says that righteousness is coming down. There's the second coming. He's talking about the second coming. Comes down, and then the scripture says, let the earth open. What is that, 45:7?
Yeah, I can't think of it.
It's in Isaiah 45. I don't want to get too distracted, but it says, let the earth open and let them bring forth righteousness. All right, something's coming up from underground, and the earth's opened. Eden was buried in a very great valley. God covered it up, largely because the tree of life is there. It's always been there, and it has a great purpose in the millennium and into eternity. All right, so what I think to make this, too clear or absurd, no matter what your position is.
Sometimes it's both.
Jesus, when the earth opens, Abraham's bosom is revealed again. It's like a country under your feet.
So yeah, it's actually Isaiah 45, verse 8. Drop down, ye heavens from above, and let the skies pour down righteousness.
There's the second coming. The armies of Christ are behind him.
Let the earth open. This is interesting. And let them bring forth salvation, and let righteousness spring up together. I, the Lord, have created. Who's the them?
Melchizedek, the tribe of Salem.
Okay, now
we're into Melchizedek, which also brings you back to the teaching. The theological teaching is because Paul was translated into paradise. People say, well, paradise has been removed from the nether earth and taken into heaven. What? Who gives somebody the right to say that? I know some angel said it, some professor said it, and everybody bought into it. Just if you live in a house and you move out of your house, it doesn't mean the house is gone.
No, I mean, he said he was caught up into the third heaven, and then it says that Christ led captivity captive.
Yeah, because they were in paradise before the cross, before the resurrection. Dead souls went to paradise, Abraham's bosom.
But if I took people out of my home and led them to my second home, that doesn't mean that the first home is no longer in existence.
You might still have the original owners of the house might be still living there. They were renting to you. They're going to value it. So all I'm saying is paradise isn't empty. Abraham's bosom isn't empty. But the guests that were staying there for a little while until after Calvary have left. But Melchizedek's tribe, Salem, has never left. Eden is still there. The tree of life is still there. All this stuff is still there. God didn't just get rid of it. I don't know where anybody's not curious about that. What happened to the tree of life? What happened to the tree of knowledge?
Well, I think, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I think what an argument would be, if I was on the other side, and I don't see this, but I'm playing devil's advocate. An argument would be, well, when the flood came, everything was destroyed and wiped away. I mean, I know that's low-hanging fruit, but...
The flood came, everything was
just wiped away. The tree of life, everything was just destroyed.
On the face of a dry land.
Right.
But if it's buried, it's not on the dry land.
And if it's a tree of life, why isn't it still growing? I mean,
why he still needs it? That's where the throne's going to be. And when he brings... Another thing that happens with this opening of the earth is God takes the city on the sides of the north, Zion, that's presently in the third heaven. He brings that whole city right down, and he sets it right back up on paradise on the highest mountain. But it's all in the same place. It's all in the same vicinity. And the throne
doesn't change, and the actual Dead Sea is actually lifted up.
And the river of life emanates from the throne. But now the throne, if you read carefully, the throne that was in heaven is now on earth, because the water is for the what? It's for the healing of the nations. Well, there's no nations in heaven that need healing. And it's for the regeneration of the earth. The earth starts to regenerate. Ezekiel talks about this, Ezekiel 47, a great river that goes through, and everything is, the tree of life is now producing fruit for the healing of the nations and everything. All this water is magnificent. And the optics are staggering.
Yeah.
But that's why Jesus called the millennium the regeneration. He said, to the apostles, he says, in the regeneration, you guys are going to sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right.
So that all happens in the regeneration is the perfect word for the millennium. The Bible calls the millennium the regeneration, the rest, and the refreshing.
Yes.
You go to Bible college, we call it the millennium. And I do too, because nobody else knows what we're talking about.
Right.
So, but it's 1,000 years. But during this 1,000 years, the earth regenerates. It starts to repair itself. Because the new earth doesn't show up for 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And neither does New Jerusalem, by the way.
Right.
People often conflate, or I call it Bible goulash, if they say, well, New Jerusalem and this city that's coming down is the same place. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. The new earth's not in existence yet. The new heaven isn't in existence yet. And neither is New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem is a 1,000-year anniversary present for the bride. New Jerusalem is a planet that comes down out of heaven, orbits the earth, and the nations below will bask in its light. But it's for the church.
Right.
It has nothing. We've been talking about Israel a lot, but the New Jerusalem's for us. It's for the bride. I'm just wanting to be clear about that. So these things are happening on the earth, and it's a fantastic scene.
So once we get to the new heaven and new earth, that's where things get way off into the deep end bit.
Yeah, but even in the millennium, there's still people being born.
Sure.
In the natural way. Isaiah says if somebody dies if they're 100 years old, they'll consider them a child. Okay, we're not talking about the church anymore.
No.
Okay, so during the millennium, you'll eat from the tree of life and live forever, if you're allowed. That'll be handled by probably the apostles. The government in the millennium's laid out for us. Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. He's on the throne, which is in Jerusalem. It's not in New Jerusalem. It's on this earth. And then under him is King David forever. And under him are the 12 apostles and the Lamb. Those are your three branches of government. Jesus Christ, King David, 12 apostles and the Lamb. And the Jewish citizenry runs everything. Which we've spoken many times. That's why Satan knows this, that the Jew will run everything. Any Gentile nation that's declared will end eventually. In the future. So,
okay, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
Well, the Jews, if Satan can annihilate every Jew, every living Jew, we're not talking about resurrected Jews, to make the prophecies true. Jews have to be alive at the second coming. They get saved during the tribulation, and they are alive when Jesus Christ comes back, and then they start to reproduce. It's in the rest. It's in the refreshing.
Which is why
he beats God if he wipes out the Jew.
Right, which is why universally anti-Semitism is a universal. It doesn't matter whether you're Chinese communist,
it's a default position.
Venezuelan socialist. It doesn't matter. There is a default position in the world system that is. Look, you can get 10 different nations. They can't agree on one thing.
That's
but
right.
What 10 nations can't agree on is the Jews.
Everybody hates the Jew.
Right.
Remember that old song about prejudice? Do you remember that? The black man hates the white man. The Protestant hates the Catholic, and he runs through all this stuff. But the chorus was, and everybody hates the Jew.
Right.
And everybody hates the Jews.
There's something really rooted satanic in this.
Spectacular.
It really is. So, all right, so let's come back. You had mentioned Melchizedek. There is a prince that will rule.
Okay, one other thing about this is back to UFOs, because all this stuff does start to congeal on them. Every UFO out there isn't the bad guys. Now, that makes it, again, Let
me pause and ask you a question. Is it that they have to use these advanced technologies, or is it that they're able to manifest themselves in a social matrix? What I mean by that is when you see them in the Old Testament, you have chariots.
Social matrix.
But a context. In other words, are they revealing themselves, or are they forced to manifest themselves within the social matrix that would be recognized? In other words, Jesus didn't wear a Joseph and Banks three-piece suit. He wore the attire of the day.
And he had incorruptible flesh, too. That's another thing to think about.
Right. So then you got these the chariot of my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. So is it that that's what they are, or are they manifesting themselves in a historical context? In other words, you think I'm seeing a quote-unquote spaceship,
both could be true.
But that's the way they manifest themselves.
Both of those things could be true.
The technology, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's explaining what he's seeing, but it could be, it's a vehicle, it's a chariot. And all these things, there's hybrid still. And I like to point out, actually this book is almost a sequel to Angels and Giants. Because when giants first show up after the flood, the famous one would be Og, and it looks like Og's 12 feet tall, okay?
Yeah.
He's a king, he's over 60 cities, walled cities, he's running things, he's involved with the government. And then compare him to Goliath, who's 450 years later, and Goliath's 9.5 feet tall. And Goliath, by the way, is never called the giant. People retelling the story call him a giant, but he's called a great champion, and he certainly doesn't have the intellectual prowess to be running 60 cities and walled towns. He's like a jock champion who's ruling things with physical strength. So the only point here is that the giants are getting smaller, 12 feet to 9.5,
more brutish,
and they're getting smaller and smaller. And so they did survive, but how anybody wants to argue it, 9.5 feet tall is too tall, right?
Yeah.
So 12 feet's ridiculous, you know. So they're not human. You're not completely human. So some of these hybrid things could still be alive today, and they could have far advanced technology than we do, and they could be underground bases or whatever. And they could certainly be part of the UFO situation. Now, real quick about Melchizedek. If you are even considering that it's possible that he is an unfallen son of Adam and Eve, and I know people have called me up years later and say, I thought you were an absolute heretic. You first said this, but it really doesn't. It doesn't interfere with any dispensation of truth or anything.
No.
It makes it more interesting. Might complicate things a little bit, but it also fixes some things. I guess what I'm trying to say is can you imagine a society that's not fallen, or if Adam and Eve, what kind of technology they'd have today after 6,000 years of development? Just think about that. I mean, they just didn't sit around and wrap a towel around their head and live in a tent, As Adam and Eve Adam was taking care of the garden, and he'd probably say things like, this would be a lot better if I could use a rake or a hoe, and he invented things, and that's what people do. Jesus came as a carpenter. Carpenters build things, they create things. That's the perfect type.
So I gotta pause here, because, when you look at culture, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. I can't think of Black Panther. What was the name of the Rwanda? Wakanda. Wakanda
forever. Wakanda forever.
The secret, hidden, advanced city of Black Panther. You've got I don't even know what Wonder Woman's Amazon crowd was, but they had a secret place. You've got that. Then you've got these other places, and there's always been in culture the land of the North. The North. You've always been in culture. There's this land somewhere where people are highly advanced, and you wonder if that's not built in. And I was reading something in Hebrews, because I've been thinking a lot about Melchizedek lately. Made like unto the Son of God. That's a huge theological statement right there.
Right.
But Abraham.
So was unfallen Adam, by the way.
Right. Abraham. The Bible says Abraham sought for a city.
Looking for a city.
He seeks for one to come.
Right, but what he's looking for, and I'm going to have to go back and look at it, but it's fascinating when you read there.
For here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come.
Right.
That's the city from the sides of the north that's going to come down.
Right, but listen, this is what Abraham sought for. We seek for a city in the future. But it says very clearly, for he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God.
Amen.
Now that is, in the English, that's present tense where he is. For he looked.
He's looking.
he was looking. When he left and God called him, he was looking for a city. The question is, did he find it with Melchizedek?
He found part of it.
I'm not saying it was completion, because later on it says these all died in faith, not having received the promise.
Well, I can't really prove this, but all I know is from the book of Revelation that throne does end up in the book of Revelation in a temple.
Yeah.
In the third heaven. So when did it go there? It was probably originally on this earth, because that's where God wants to put it and rule the universe. So I'm thinking it was probably originally on this earth. God, when he buried Eden, it would be logical to me that he removed that to the third heaven. Salem's still here, Eden's still here, but the city might not necessarily be there, other than a great city, Salem.
Well, my point is if these people are still living, if these people are, if the unfallen of Adam are still living, and you're talking about technology,
that's what, back to the UFOs. It's not that it's miraculous or even that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But they would be living somewhere, by definition, a city.
It's better math.
Right.
That's what a UFO is. That's what a portal is.
It's the ability to manipulate the elements with a better
technology.
If we have
one time we'd get there, it's better math. That's what it is.
So that's what's interesting, is he was looking for a city, and he encountered Melchizedek, had didn't bat an eye. He tithed to Melchizedek. And
in Hebrews it says, but now we seek one to come.
Because now we seek one to come.
It's coming.
Right. It's coming. And truthfully, too, because we are a heavenly people.
Yeah, but we are the Jews.
Okay.
That's important. Because the Jews are running things, and the Jews are running the universe.
Yeah.
You know, the nations that do survive for a while take hold of the skirt of him and who is a Jew and say, we'll go with you because God's with you. Tell us, help us. The Jews are supposed to be running things now.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're all a bunch of evolutionists, and they're secular, and they only mention prayer and God when they're talking to Christians and they want America's money.
Do you think that the word, when the Bible refers to watchers, do you think that could be talking about some of these?
Yes, I do. I can't. It's hard to define what a watcher is. You might be a watcher. I mean, you're watching things. You're zeroed in on Israel. You're zeroed to people, Bible thumpers. But I think they're angels. You know, I think they're angels, or they're somebody from Melchizedek.
So to come back to AI in this book, I think one of the things I'm coming away with in reading this book, and quite frankly, in reading a lot of the different material that you have, is that it feels like, and I think you can make a case. I think you can make a case that this was done maybe, as we entered fully into the dispensation of the church age. But it feels as if the veil between us and Christ was torn apart in the sense of salvation. But the veil of the supernatural world was kind of lowered down. But the closer we get to the coming of the Lord, it's as if that veil is being lifted, and we're seeing more and more of this stuff that's kind of been below the surface. It's on Main Street, main news,
right,
mainstream, and we're seeing that veil lift to the point where
the veil lifting, though, is the book. It's torn apart by what you know about this book.
It's leading the way.
Amen.
It's leading the way.
Yes.
It's telling you what's coming. But which I think is going to be interesting. I don't think Christians are near as supernatural as I like to think that they are. I don't think they're near as prepared for a spiritual reality.
No, I agree with that. First of all, your spirit, your soul and your spirit are saved. Your body's not saved. Your body's still a mess. It's still, it's circumcised away from your soul, and it's dying. All right? And Christians, look, I still say, I'm amazed at how uncurious so many Christians are about so much of the Bible. But I'm also amazed, the older I get, how little some Christians know about the Bible. I'm not saying that I know way more than everybody else. I'm not saying that. But it's almost, it's astounding, really. Here we have this book. In these last days, we have this book all put together. And we're all fighting over the silliest stuff,
Yeah.
From dress codes to whatever, what people eat for dinner. And I want to know, let's talk about, I think God wants to have his people to have a relationship with the book.
Yes.
That's my mission. I'm a prison chaplain. I like to those people to have, I said, I'm here so you can have a relationship with the book. You don't have to agree with me on everything, but get into the book. Understand some things.
So, artificial intelligence, let me ask you 2 questions. Why does a Christian need to know this information? If we're connecting this with the book, what is the Christian going to walk away with, and why do we need to know this information?
Well, it's sort of just what I said. God wants you to have a relationship with the book. We are in the last days. Things are happening. He's got all kinds of prophecies written down here. He's got all kinds of things written about even Melchizedek. I mean, nobody knows anything about Melchizedek, it seems. And then even in Hebrews it says, Paul says, or whoever wrote it, says, has much to say. Scripture says he has much to say about Melchizedek. Yeah. Which he says to the people, he says, you can't hear it. Because he says, you should be ready for me, but I can only give you milk. And so whatever true, so the Christian, no matter if they, there's people out there might think I'm crazy, but how much, and then ask yourself, the Bible says there's much to say about Melchizedek. How much do you know about him? Why is it strong meat? Why does Scripture say you'll have trouble digesting it? What is this? What is this truth? That's about Melchizedek. How come he appears? How come he appears right with Israel? How come he appears in the book of Hebrews, which is again to Israel? How come he's associated with Israel? And how come this Salem, which is, I'm absolutely convinced, is a tribe of Israel that's in the nether earth, that's going to be a parent and work with the redeemed of Israel. And we might as well talk about that, the 144,000.
All right. We'll have to save that one.
Okay.
We'll have to save that one. I want to give them everything, man. I don't want to give them everything. Where can we get the book?
Everything I have is on Amazon.
Amazon.
Unless you happen to be near me, and then you can get it for $2 cheaper. It's $6.
And then I've also got this one. I just started this last night.
Prophet's Rule.
Prophet's Rule. Unbelievable book. There are many other books that people can get. And I love what you said. I jotted that down, curious. Why aren't we more curious about the Bible? It's like we get entrenched in what we know and we stop, but there's so much there. Here, you talk about...
Because we're satisfied.
Well, the soul trap, it's amazing to me.
We don't have time.
No, the soul trap is about being curious. And I think the most paranormal, interdimensional, strange book in all the world is the Bible.
Amen.
It is not chicken soup for the soul. It is telling you about a world beyond anything you can imagine.
Amen.
Most Christians don't put up with it. We're going to end this portion of our interview. I'm going to save it. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the 144,000. We're going to talk more about this. But right now, people need to get this book, Artificial Intelligence, The Prophet's Rule, anything by you. I love the book on the parables. You recommended that last time.
To learn the Bible, I think Parables is probably my best book.
Yeah, that one has...
more mainstream. Now, this is... I don't want to... It's not crazy.
Well, I wouldn't say mainstream. I mean, I wouldn't just say mainstream. I think it's a great Bible tool. So it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dead.